Alright, so today is lesson 59. We are going to continue graphing quadratic functions. Okay, very similar to yesterday. We're just going to change one of the numbers a little bit, so they'll get just a little bit more complicated, but really basically just the same thing that we were doing yesterday. Okay, so I'm going to move on to your steps. Again, these are just the same as yesterday. So you want to put your equation in standard form. You're going to identify a, b, and c. Then you'll evaluate the negative b over 2a, that little formula that we have, to find the x-coordinate of the vertex. That's going to be your middle point in your table, and then you'll find two x values that are smaller than it, two that are bigger, and then find the y-coordinates that go along with those x values, plot the ordered pairs, and then draw your U-shaped curve. Okay? Alright, so we are going to start with number 1. Go ahead, just put your pencils down and watch as I go through number 1. Okay, so first, I'm looking at my equation. I see, yes, it's in standard form, right? So my a is negative 1, b is negative 8, and c is negative 14. Okay, so this is just a little bit different from yesterday because I have a negative 1 for a. Right? Yesterday, if you look back, my a term was 1 for each of the examples. So this is just a little bit more complicated for that reason. But I'm going to continue on with the same steps. So I'll do negative b over 2a. Solving for that, I plug in negative 8 for b and negative 1 for a. Right? And I solve, I get 8 over negative 2. Right? The negative times the negative 8 is just positive 8. Then 2 times negative 1 gives me negative 2. So my answer is negative 4. Okay, then I make my table. Right, step 3, I use the negative 4 as my middle point, and then I go 2 in either direction. Okay, so I'll start with negative 4 in the middle, then I have negative 3, negative 2, and negative 5, negative 6. Okay, I know the board, it kind of covers the negative 2, but that's what's there. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to plug in these values for x. So I'm just plugging these directly into my original equation. And I get this. Okay, so negative 36. Again, it's negative here because I square the negative, I get positive 36, and then I bring down the negative. Okay, so that's why it's a negative 36. Plus 48 minus 14. Whoop. Alright, sorry. So here we are plugging in negative 5 now. Okay, so this is what I get for that. That gives me 1 as my final y value. Okay, then I'm going to plug in negative 3. I get 2. Right, and then plugging in that was negative 4. Now plugging in negative 3, I get 1, and plugging in negative 2, I get negative 2. Okay, then just like yesterday, I'm going to use these x and y coordinates to plot the points on my graph and draw the curve. So I have these 5 points, right? Negative 6, negative 2, negative 5, 1, negative 4, 2, negative 3, 1, and negative 2, negative 2. And I sketch my curve, and I'm done with number 1. You'll notice this graph is facing upside down, right? We had some that looked like this when we did our card activity and on Monday's homework, right? When you had to identify the vertex, the axis of symmetry, where it's increasing and decreasing. All of that, some of them were upside down, okay? But yesterday, when we graphed, they were all facing up. So this is a new addition, which could tell us that maybe that negative is what flips it upside down, right? We'll explore that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to move on to number 2 now. Again, same thing. I'm finding a, b, and c. Okay, so a is 2, b is 12, and c is 19. Right, then I'm going to take, question?
Why don't you square 2 so it'd be 4?
Good question. So the square is next to just the x. Okay, so if there were parentheses around the 2x and then it was that squared, then you would square the 2. But in this case, this is already in our standard form, and if you look, a is just the number that's in front of the x squared. Okay, so we don't have to square the 2. A is just 2 here. Does that make sense? Okay, good question though. Okay, so again, yeah, that's a new addition, right? This is the first time we've had another number besides 1 or now negative 1. So we have a positive 2 now for A. We'll do negative B over 2A. And that gives us a negative 12 over 2 times 2, which is negative 12 over 4, or negative 3. All right, so next I make my table. Okay, I have x and I have y equal to the original function. I'm going to start by setting the negative b over 2a that I found, right? Negative 3. That's going to be my first point for x. I'm going to go 2 up and 2 down. Negative 2, negative 1. Going 2 down, I have negative 4 and negative 5. All right, then I'm solving for each of these by plugging in the negative 5. So when I square negative 5, I get positive 25, right? And then I multiply that by 2. So I get y equals 2 times 25 plus 12 times the negative 5 gives me negative 60, and then plus 19. Okay, so I'm just plugging that x in, plugging negative 5 in for x anywhere I see it, and I'm squaring the first one because it's x squared, right? Okay, so I get y equals 9 for my first y coordinate. I'm going to continue just plugging in these values for x. Okay, so negative 4 squared, I get 16. Plugging in, I get 3 for my next y coordinate. I get 1 when I plug in negative 3. Plugging in negative 2, I get 3. And then plugging in negative 1, I get 9. Okay, so now I plot these points. My first point is negative 5, 9. My second point is negative 4, 3. My third point is negative 3, 1. Right? And I have negative 2, 3. And negative 1, 9. So negative 1 and 9. Right, I have 5 points. So I can draw my U-shaped curve. And I'm done with number 2. I tried to make them kind of curved at the bottom. It's a little difficult. I tried my best, though. That's what counts, right? All right, do we have any questions on number 1 or 2? Okay, I went through them kind of quickly, but again, it's a very similar method to yesterday. Okay, we just have a different value for A, so it just basically makes our calculations we have to be a little more careful, right? Okay, look at those, though. Let me know. Raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, so just to go over again how I get the x values here. I'm taking negative b over 2a. Okay, that's my second step, right? Step number 2 is to evaluate negative b over 2a. The reason why that's important is because that gives me the x value of the vertex. Okay, do you see the vertex here is negative 3, 1? So that gives me that x, negative 3. So when I'm looking at my table, I put negative 3 in the middle, and then I want to see what's going on right around the vertex, because that's going to give me the shape, right? I know that it's kind of symmetric around the vertex. So I go 2 steps down, so I see what's going on at negative 3 in the middle, what's going on to the left 1 unit, and to the left 2 units. Okay, then I go in the positive direction, so I see what's going on at 1 unit to the right of the vertex, and what's going on 2 units to the right of the vertex. Okay, does that make a little bit more sense? Are we clear on where I get these x values? Yes. So it starts with the negative b over 2a. That goes in the middle. I go 2 up, so 2 to the right, and I go 2 to the left. I evaluate all those 5 points. Okay, are we clear on that? All right, are we ready to go on to number 3? Or are we still copying these down? Sort of. Okay, a few more seconds here. All right, moving on to number 3. So I am erasing number 4. So you're going to focus on number 3. I want you to, on your iPad, flip them over. Tell me what A, B, and C are. A, B, and C. All right, so A, B, and C, I think we all got A equals negative 3. B equals negative 12, and C equals negative 13. Okay? So just make sure you're watching the negatives here, and you don't include any of the x's, okay? The a, b, and c, they're just the number in front of the variable, or the constant at the end for c. Okay, now I want you guys to evaluate what's negative b over 2a. Negative b over 2a equals what? Plugging in a and b here. So for the negative b, I have that equals a negative times negative 12 divided by 2, and for a, I'm plugging in negative 3. Okay? So negative times negative 12 gives me positive 12. Divided by 2 times negative 3 gives me negative 6. Okay, and that's going to give me a negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to set up my table. Go ahead and set up a table in your notes along with me. We're not on iPads anymore. You're going to just write this in your notes. Okay, so I'm setting up my table. Okay, I have negative 2 in the middle, and I go 2 spaces to the right. So I go to negative 1 and 0. Please stop. Then I go 2 spaces back, so I go to negative 3 and negative 4. Okay, so I want you guys to take a few minutes now and solve for y here. So you're plugging in these values into the original equation. Okay, work with your partner. Make sure that you agree with the answers that you're getting. I'm going to call on you for answers in a few minutes. Okay, I'll be walking around. All right, so negative 4. When I plug in negative 4, Kayla, did you plug in negative 4 for x? Yes, what did you get?
I'm still working on it.
Still working on it? Okay, so let's go through together really quickly. You should have y equals negative 3 times negative 4 squared. What's negative 4 squared, Kayla? Negative 4 squared. You need to square. So 4 times 4? Yeah, 16. And then we'll have minus 12 times negative 4. 12 times 4? 48. And the negative times the negative makes it positive. So positive 48 and then minus 13. Okay, who did 3 times 16? What was 3 times 16?
Negative 48.
Negative 48. Okay, so Kayla, what's my answer then if I have these? Yeah, exactly. These cancel out, so it's just negative 13. All right, thank you. And negative 3, if x equals negative 3, what did you get when you plugged that in, Daniel? For x equals negative 3, did you plug that in?
Yeah.
Okay, what'd you get?
I got negative.
Negative 4, okay. Me too. All right, and plugging in negative 2. What did you get when you plugged in negative 2, Brianna? Did you plug in negative 2 for x? What did you get there? You got negative 1, okay. I got that as well. All right, and we can do the math on these other two. Okay, but I'm going to tell you now that we have that same pattern from yesterday, right? And you guys probably saw that in number 1 and number 2, right? They kind of go into the middle and then they go out in the same way. It's symmetric. So the next one should be negative 4 and then a negative 13. Okay, so on your iPads, quickly plot these points and graph them. Sorry, question? Good question. On Doceri, plot these points. But first, listen, we have a question. So is it always going to be in this pattern? What is our question? The answer is yes if you make your table this way every time. So if you always start with the vertex and go 1 and then 2 spaces back, and then 1 and then 2 spaces forward, it is always going to be this pattern because remember, the vertex is the center point, right? That's where the axis of symmetry is. So it's going to be symmetric about those points. However, if you're doing this on a test, I would probably take the time to solve both so that you can check yourself, right? If you did the first one wrong and you see that you get negative 13 in the last one, you can see, oh, hey, I must have messed up in one of these because I got 2 different answers, and they should be the same. Okay, so that's a good way to be able to kind of check yourself. But yes, it should always be this kind of pattern. Okay, so you're plotting the points and then graphing the U-shaped curve. Okay, so plotting, I have -4, -4, -13 is right here. -3, guys, focus up here, please. -3, -4 is right here. -2, -1. And then going back down the other way, I have -1, -4, and 0, -13. I draw my curve, and I'm done with number 3. Okay, make sure that you have that in your notes, and we're going to move on to number 4. Okay, so for A you get 4, B you get 8, and C you have 5. Now you're going to do -b over 2a. Okay, plug in B and A and solve. Alright, so solving -b over 2a, we get negative, plugging in B is for 8, and then A I plug in 4. Solving, that's just -8 over 8, which is -1.
Got that right.
Okay, now I'm going to make my table. -1 is going to be the middle x value. Okay, so I'll make my table with x and y equal to the original function. And then I am putting -1 in the middle. I go 2 spots to the right, so I have 0 and 1, and then 2 spots back to the left, so -2 and -3. Okay, quickly try to plug in these x values to solve for y. Okay, when x equals -3, I got 17. So check your addition. Hey, guys. Hey, this is why we're practicing in class, okay? So check your work, make sure that you got 17 as well. -2, how about Jared? Did you get -2 when you plug in -2 for x? What'd you get for y?
5.
5, okay. I got 5 as well. And -1. Let's have Andrew. Did you plug in x equals -1?
Yeah.
What'd you get for y?
-1.
I got +1. So check your negatives. Okay. All right, and then the pattern works the other way. So quickly,
5 and 7.
we get 5 and 17 going the other way as well. And now plot your points on your iPad and show me the graph really quickly so that we can get you guys started on homework. So quickly, please show me the graph. All right, so I plot these 5 points. Okay, I have -4, 17, -2, 5, -1, 1, 0, 5, and 1, 17. I sketch my curve, and I am done. Okay, thank you. That's it for today's lesson.